The snowstorm and the child the wind screamed across the frozen valley, carrying sharp flakes of ice that cut against Ethan Cole's visor like tiny blades. The snowstorm was so thick he could barely see more than a few steps ahead. Every sound was muffled except the endless howl of the wind, making the world feel empty, cold, and dangerous. He had been walking for hours, his boots sinking into deep snow with each step, searching for shelter before the freezing night arrived. Then, through the storm, he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. It was faint at first, almost drowned. Out by the wind, a small, soft laugh, high and light, like a child's. Ethan stopped in his tracks, every instinct in his body telling him to be careful. There shouldn't be any children out here, not in this weather, not on this planet. But the laugh came again, closer this time. It sent a strange shiver down his spine. Not of fear, but of curiosity. He followed the sound, moving slowly, his hand resting on the hilt of his survival blade. The snow crunched softly under his boots. As he pushed forward, eyes scanning the white fog ahead, and then he saw it, a small figure sitting in the snow. The figure was tiny, no more than a child's height, skin that glowed faintly blue even in the dim light. The child wore no helmet, no heavy coat, only a simple suit that shimmered slightly in the wind. Their eyes were large and bright, reflecting the snow like mirrors, and they were smiling at him. Ethan froze, unsure what to do. The child didn't look afraid, didn't try to run. Instead, they tilted their heads slightly, as if studying him. "Are you lost?" Ethan called out, raising his voice over the storm. The child just kept smiling, not answering. Then they lifted one small hand and pointed behind him. A deep growl rumbled through the air. Low and dangerous, Ethan's muscles tightened as he turned his head. Through the swirling snow, shapes began to appear. Big shapes, moving slowly, their golden eyes glowing in the fog. Snow lions. He had read about them in the mission files. Apex predators of the northern plains, fast, powerful, and smart enough to hunt in packs. They were larger than earth lions, their fur thick and white to blend with the snow, with long golden manes that caught the faint sunlight, and they were circling him now. Ethan stepped back toward the child, keeping his eyes on the predators. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice firm. But when he glanced at the child, he saw they were still smiling. Not a nervous smile, but calm, almost like they were watching something they had expected all along. The lions moved closer, their paws silent on the snow. One of them bared its teeth, steam rising from its breath. Ethan gripped his blade tighter, feeling his heartbeat quicken. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of blood. He realized it wasn't his blood, it was coming from somewhere nearby, and the lions had followed it here. "Listen," Ethan said to the child, trying again. "You need to run now." The child shook their head slowly, their smile never fading. Ethan didn't understand. Why weren't they scared? Why weren't they running? The first lion crouched low, its muscles tensing. Ethan knew the look. It was about to pounce. He moved his feet, lowering his stance, ready to strike. The snow swirled around them, and for a moment, everything seemed to slow. The child's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, they spoke. Their voice soft but clear. "They are here for you, human." The words sent a cold shiver through him that had nothing to do with the wind. The lions stepped closer. There, golden eyes, never blinking. Ethan tightened his grip on the blade, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. He didn't know why the child was smiling, or what they meant by those words. But one thing was clear: if he didn't survive the next few minutes, he would never find out. The growl of the lions rose, deep and powerful, echoing off the icy cliffs. The storm raged on, snow whipping through the air like white fire, and in the middle of it all, the child just stood there, smiling. The first lion shifted its weight, its tail flicking once. Ethan bent his knees, Ready? The battle was about to begin, and he was alone. The first charge, the first lion moved before Ethan could blink. A blur of white and gold exploding through the snow. Its massive paws throwing up powder into the air. Ethan twisted his body to the side, feeling the rush of air as claws sliced past his shoulder. The beast landed behind him with a heavy thud, its tail whipping through the wind like a whip. The child still didn't run. They stood in the same place, that strange, calm smile. Still on their face, their bright eyes followed every movement, as if this was a game only they understood. Ethan didn't have time to question them. The lion turned again, its muscles coiling for another leap. Ethan's hand gripped the handle of his blade so tight he could feel the grooves biting into his glove. The storm roared around them, wind cutting into his faceplate. He stepped sideways in the snow, trying to keep the predator in front of him. But then he saw shadows moving through the storm, 2 more lions appearing out of the fog. Larger than the first, his breath came fast, 3 against 1. The odds were worse than bad. Still, he couldn't let them reach the child. He shifted his weight, lowering his stance, every muscle in his body ready to strike. The first lion growled, steam rolling from its jaws. It lunged again, but this time Ethan stepped into it. His blade cut across its shoulder. Hot blood spraying into the cold air. The beast roared in pain, twisting away, its eyes burning with rage. The snow beneath them turned red, steam rising from the fresh wound. Ethan didn't have time to celebrate the hit. The second lion came. From the side, its paws silent, its speed terrifying. He barely got his arm up in time, the impact knocking him backward into the snow. Pain shot through his ribs as the beast's weight pressed down, its teeth snapping inches from his face. He jammed his blade upward, feeling it bite into muscle. The lion screamed and pulled back, blood dripping from its side. The child clapped once, softly, almost like they were approving his moves. The sound felt wrong here, in the middle of a deadly fight. Ethan glanced at them for half a second too long. The third lion came from behind, slamming into his back, sending him face first into the snow. The cold bit into his skin, even through his armor. He rolled, barely avoiding a killing bite. To his neck, snow swirled, claws scraped against metal. Ethan's arms ached. His breath was sharp in his chest. He had fought before, but never like this, never in snow this deep, never with creatures this fast. Every second was survival. Every move could be his last. The first lion, wounded but alive, stalked around to his right. The second limped but still bared its teeth. The third growled from behind, its golden eyes locked on him. They were working together now, moving in a circle, cutting off any escape. Ethan's mind raced. If he waited for them to attack at once, he'd be dead. He needed to break their rhythm. He lunged toward the nearest one, the limping lion, putting all his strength into a low strike. The blade slid deep. The beast roared, and the other 2 froze for a heartbeat. It was all he needed. He spun, using the momentum to slash at the third lion's face. The blow missed its eyes, but tore through its mane, drawing more blood. Snow sprayed as it leaped back. Growling in fury, Ethan kept moving, never letting them box him in again. The child tilted their head, still watching closely. Their smile widened just slightly, and for a strange moment, Ethan felt like this was exactly what they wanted. Like they had brought him here for this. It didn't make sense, but there was no time to think. The wind shifted, bringing the heavy scent of blood and wet fur. The lion's breathing was louder now, more desperate. They were tired, but so was he. His shoulders burned, his grip ached, and every breath stabbed at his lungs. Still, he refused to drop his guard. The first lion lunged one last time, roaring so loud it cut through the storm. Ethan sidestepped, driving his blade deep into its chest. The force nearly ripped the weapon from his hands. The lion staggered, its golden eyes wide, before it collapsed into the snow with a heavy thud. The other two paused, their ears twitching. They looked at each other, then at him. Snow swirled between them, and then, slowly, they began to back away into the fog. The fight wasn't over, but this round was his. Ethan stood there, breathing hard, his blade dripping red into the white snow. The child's smile never faded. "You're not finished yet," they said softly. And somewhere beyond the storm, a deeper roar answered, shaking the air. The silent watcher, the snowstorm, had eased just enough for Ethan to see a little farther. The two surviving lions had vanished into the fog, their golden eyes swallowed by the white haze. The silence that followed was heavy, almost unnatural. As if the storm itself was holding its breath, Ethan's boots sank deep as he turned in a slow circle, scanning the frozen landscape for movement. That's when he saw her. Far ahead, half hidden by drifting snow, stood a tall figure. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin was silver, smooth and reflective like polished metal. Yet it caught the faint sunlight in a way that made her seem almost made of light. Her hair was long and black, whipping in the wind, and her eyes, even from this distance, glowed faintly blue. She stood perfectly still, arms at her sides, her long coat of white fur billowing slightly in the wind. Ethan blinked, wondering if she was a mirage caused by the storm. But the child followed his gaze and smiled wider. The woman's presence didn't surprise them. It was almost as if they had been expecting her. Ethan raised a hand, waving once, his voice rough in the cold air. "Hey, we need help over here." The woman didn't move. Her eyes seemed locked on him, studying him the same way the child had. The wind howled between them, carrying no answer, only the distant groan of ice shifting under the weight of the storm. He stepped toward her, but the child suddenly spoke, their voice soft yet certain. "She is watching, human." "Watching what?" Ethan asked, his breath forming white clouds. The child tilted their head slightly. "You?" Before Ethan could respond, a low rumble came from the left, out of the fog. One of the injured lions reappeared, limping but still dangerous, its golden mane was matted with blood, and its breath came in short, angry bursts. The child didn't flinch, their smile as calm as before. But the woman in the distance raised one hand slightly, as if to signal something. The lion didn't charge right away. It circled instead, keeping its gaze locked on Ethan. Testing him, he adjusted his stance, keeping the blade ready. The woman's eyes never left him, not even to look at the predator. It was as if she didn't care about the lion at all, as if the real thing she wanted to see was how he would fight. The beast lunged suddenly, snow exploding beneath its paws. Ethan met it with a quick sidestep, slashing across its flank. The lion roared in pain, but wheeled around for another attack. Again, Ethan dodged, cutting deep into its shoulder this time. The child clapped once, just like before. The sound seemed to echo unnaturally in the stillness. Finally, with a final growl, the lion staggered back and collapsed into the snow. Steam rose from its body, mixing with the cold air. Ethan stood over it, chest heaving, his blade dripping red onto the white ground. When he looked up, the silver-skinned woman had taken a step closer. "Who are you?" Ethan called, his voice sharp with both exhaustion and frustration. The woman tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. Her voice was clear and smooth, but it carried through the wind, as if it came from everywhere. "At once, prove you are worthy." The words struck him harder than the storm's chill. Worthy? Worthy of what? He wanted to shout for answers, but something in her gaze told him she would not give them. Not yet. Her hand lowered to her side, and she stood still again. A silent judge over the frozen battlefield. The child stepped closer to Ethan. There, Small footprints pressing into the snow. She will not come to you. They said, you must show her. Ethan stared down at the child, their smile both innocent and unsettling. His mind raced. Was this all a test? Were the lions sent here on purpose? The storm shifted again, the wind picking up. From somewhere deep within the white haze came more growls, low, steady, and many. Shapes began to move at the edge of his vision, larger and heavier than before. The woman didn't react. The child just smiled, as though this was exactly what they had been waiting for. Ethan's fingers tightened around the hilt of his blade. He was tired, bleeding, and cold. But whatever this test was, it wasn't over. In fact, it felt like it had only just begun. The woman's eyes glowed brighter for a moment. Ha! And Ethan swore he saw the faintest curve of a smile on her lips. It was not the smile of a friend, but of someone who had set the rules of a game and was watching to see if he would survive it. The growls grew louder, snow shifted beneath heavy paws, and more golden eyes appeared in the storm. Ethan took one step forward, planting his boots firmly in the snow. If this was the challenge she wanted, then he would meet it head-on. The child tilted their head, whispering, "Now she will see." Asterisk alone against the pride the golden eyes multiplied in the fog. One pair became 3, then 5, then more. Ethan could hear the crunch of heavy paws in the snow, slow and steady, as if the lions were in no hurry to attack. They were confident. They knew they had the numbers. The child stood at his side, small and still, their calm smile never wavering, far behind them. The silver-skinned woman remained motionless, her gaze fixed on him like a judge waiting for a verdict. Ethan's breath misted in the freezing air. His grip on the blade was firm, but his arms felt heavy. The earlier fight had drained him, and his shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. Still, he could not afford to look weak. Not now, not in front of her, not with the child watching. The first lion stepped into view, its mane glistening with frost. It was massive, its head nearly level with Ethan's chest, muscles rippling beneath thick white fur behind it. More lions emerged from the haze, a hunting formation spreading out to box him in. Their low growls blended with the wind, creating a deep, unsettling hum in the air. Ethan shifted his stance, his boots sinking deeper into the snow. The cold bit into his fingers, but he kept his weapon ready. He knew what was coming. They would test him from different angles, each attack forcing him to defend until he made a mistake. And when that mistake came, they would all rush him at once. The child looked up at him, their voice soft but strangely steady. "They will not stop until you fall." Ethan glanced down. "Then I'll make sure I don't fall." The smile on their face widened just a fraction, as if they liked his answer. A sudden blur of movement, the first lion lunged straight at him, snow exploding beneath its paws. Ethan pivoted, his blade slicing through the air, catching the beast across the flank. It roared in pain, but didn't stop. Its massive paw swinging at his chest, the impact knocked him sideways, nearly throwing him into the snow. He rolled, using the momentum to get back on his feet before the second lion charged from the left. He ducked low, the lion's claws swiping just above his head. His blade stabbed upward, catching the creature in the shoulder. Blood sprayed warm against the freezing air, steaming as it hit the snow. The beast howled and stumbled back. But another shape was already moving in. They came in a rhythm now, one from the front, one from the side, one from behind. Ethan turned and twisted, blocking with his blade, kicking out with his boots, using every scrap of training and instinct he had. Each strike drained him, each breath burned in his lungs. Snow sprayed in all directions, red streaks marking where his blade had found flesh. The lions weren't reckless, they were smart. Every time he struck one, the others backed off just enough to keep him spinning, never giving him a clear target for long. Ethan realized this wasn't just survival. It was a display, a test of endurance as much as skill, and the one watching from the distance was judging every move. He risked a glance at the silver-skinned woman. She still hadn't moved. The faint blue glow in her eyes seemed stronger now. It wasn't approval. It wasn't pity. It was something colder, something like calculation. A roar cut through his thoughts, a deeper, heavier sound than the rest, from the swirling snow. Stepped the largest lion he had seen yet. It was massive, easily twice the size of the others, its mane darker, streaked with silver. And a deep scar ran across its muzzle. The other lions stepped back as it approached, lowering their heads. Ethan knew immediately this was the leader. The beast's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment the storm seemed too quiet. It moved with slow confidence, each step deliberate, its paws sinking deep into the snow. It didn't rush, didn't need to. Ethan adjusted his stance, forcing himself to stand tall despite the ache in his muscles. The child's voice came again, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. If you fall to him, you will not rise again. The leader circled him once, its tail flicking slowly. Ethan kept turning with it, never giving it his back. He could feel the other lions waiting, ready to join the fight the second their leader struck. Araloo. Then, without warning, it lunged. The force of the charge was like being hit by a wall. Ethan was thrown backward, crashing into the snow, the weight of the beast pressing down on his chest. Claws scraped against his armor, teeth snapping inches from his throat. With a desperate push, he shoved his blade upward, slicing across its side. The lion roared, pulling back just enough for Ethan to roll out from under it. He came up fast, swinging again, the blade cutting through the air and drawing more blood. The leader snarled, its breath steaming in the icy wind. They circled each other in the snow, two predators locked in a deadly dance. The watching woman did not move. The child's smile never faltered, and Ethan knew this fight was far from over. The leader's challenge, the wind whipped across the battlefield, stinging Ethan's face with icy needles. The other lions had formed a wide circle now, their glowing golden eyes fixed on the fight. They didn't move closer, not yet, as if they knew this was the leader's hunt alone. Snow crunched under Ethan's boots as he shifted his weight, his breath misting heavily in the frigid air. The leader stood tall and proud, its massive frame tense with power. Its golden mane shimmered in the faint light, streaked with silver that told of many battles survived. Its scarred muzzle twitched as it growled low and deep, the sound vibrating through the snow beneath Ethan's feet. The beast was not in a hurry. It was studying him, testing him without striking. It paced slowly, each step deliberate, forcing Ethan to turn in the snow to keep it in sight. Ethan's shoulder ached, his fingers numb from gripping the blade too tightly. Every muscle in his body was screaming from the last fight, but he couldn't let it show. The child stood a few paces behind him, still smiling, still calm. The silver-skinned woman in the distance had not moved an inch, her glowing blue eyes fixed entirely on him. The leader's pacing stopped. Its body lowered slightly, its muscles coiled. Ethan knew the move it was about to strike. He braced himself, knees bent, blade raised. The lion lunged with terrifying speed, snow exploding in every direction. Ethan dodged to the side, swinging his blade in a wide arc. The steel sliced across the beast's flank, leaving a red streak in its white fur. The lion roared in pain, but instead of retreating, it spun faster than he expected, its massive paw slamming into his side. The impact knocked the air out of him, sending him stumbling backward. He dug his boots into the snow to keep from falling, his ribs burning with pain. The leader advanced, teeth bared, its breath steaming like a furnace in the cold. Ethan tightened, his grip on the blade pushing past the ache in his body. The lion attacked again, this time feinting to the left before swinging its claws from the right. Ethan barely blocked the strike, the force rattling his arms. He countered with a quick thrust, aiming for the creature's chest. But the beast twisted away with surprising agility, its golden eyes locked on his, as if judging his worth around them. The other lions watched in perfect stillness. Not one moved forward. Not one made a sound. Their leader's fight was sacred. Ethan could feel the tension in the air, the way every second stretched longer than it should. The snow under his feet was already stained with patches of red, his and the lion's. The leader circled again, slower this time, as if it had learned his timing. Ethan shifted with it. His own breathing steady despite the pounding of his heart. He tried to read its movements to anticipate the next strike. But the storm swirled around them, snowflakes dancing in the air, blurring the edges of the beast's massive frame. Without warning, the lion lunged again, its jaws opening wide. Ethan sidestepped. But the beast's paw caught his arm, claws tearing through the outer layer of his suit. Warm blood spilled instantly into the freezing air. Pain flashed hot through his arm, but he ignored it. Stepping inside the lion's reach, he drove his blade upward, the steel biting deep into the creature's chest. The lion roared, rearing back, its front paws lifting off the ground in fury. Ethan yanked the blade free. Snow and blood sprang in the same breath. The beast staggered, but its eyes still burned with challenge. It landed heavily, shaking the ground, and lunged again before Ethan could fully recover. This time, Ethan didn't dodge. He dropped low, letting the lion's weight carry it forward, and slashed at its legs. The beast stumbled, hitting the snow hard. Ethan rose quickly, pressing the attack, his blade flashing in the dim light. Each strike drew more blood. Each step forward pushed the beast closer to the edge of defeat. The leader roared one last time, a sound so loud it shook the air. It swiped desperately. But Ethan stepped past the attack and drove his blade deep into its side. The lion's body tensed, then slowly went still, its golden eyes dimming as it collapsed into the snow. Silence fell over the battlefield. The other lions bowed their heads briefly, then stepped back, disappearing into the swirling fog. Ethan stood there, chest heaving, blood dripping from his arm, his breath forming heavy clouds in the air. He looked toward the child, who was still smiling softly. Then his eyes met the silver-skinned woman's. For the first time, she moved. She stepped forward, her voice carrying clearly through the cold. "You are not finished," she said. And from somewhere far beyond the fog came a sound deeper than any lion's roar. Something heavier was moving toward them, shaking the snow beneath his feet. Asterisk blood. In the snow, the ground trembled under Ethan's boots. The sound was deep, steady, and far heavier than the padded steps of any lion. It rolled through the frozen earth like distant thunder, rattling his bones. The silver-skinned woman did not flinch, her blue glowing eyes fixed on him as if she had known this moment was coming all along. The child's smile softened, but for the first time there was something else in their expression, a shadow of worry. Ethan's grip on his blade tightened. Blood from the leader's claws still dripped from his arm. Warm against the freezing wind, his breaths came in slow, heavy bursts, misting in the cold air. The storm around them had eased just enough for him to see the dark shape moving through the fog. It was enormous. Each step cracked the frozen surface of the snow, sending small tremors across the ground. The child spoke softly, their voice almost lost in the wind. "This one will not test you," they said. "This one will end you." Ethan didn't answer. He had no intention of dying here, but his body ached from the fight with the pride, and his strength was wearing thin. Still, his eyes stayed on the shape in the distance. The figure grew clearer. A massive beast emerged from the fog, far larger than the lion's. Its body was covered in thick, dark fur, streaked with white. its head crowned with jagged horns that glistened. With frost, its breath poured out in heavy clouds, each exhale curling in the icy air like smoke. Its eyes glowed red, not gold, and locked directly onto Ethan. The silver-skinned woman finally took a step forward, her voice cutting through the silence. "If you fall here, you are nothing," she said. Her words were not encouragement. They were cold, like an executioner reminding the condemned of their fate. The beast roared, the sound booming across the valley. Snow fell from nearby cliffs, and the smaller lions, those who had lingered, fled into the white. Ethan stood his ground. He shifted his weight, lowering his stance. Ready for the charge, the creature moved with surprising speed for its size. Its massive legs pounded the snow, closing the distance in seconds. Ethan dodged to the side at the last moment, feeling the rush of air as its horns passed inches from his chest. He slashed with his blade, striking across its flank. The cut was deep, but the beast barely reacted. It turned its head, snarling, steam rising from its nostrils. Ethan's shoulder screamed in pain as he blocked the next swipe of its massive paw. The force knocked him backward into the snow. Cold bit into his back, but he rolled quickly, just in time to avoid the crushing weight of another blow. His boots slipped on the icy surface as he pushed himself up, snow sticking to the blood on his armor. The child's voice carried over the wind. "You cannot fight it like the lions," they said. "It will not tire." Ethan's mind raced. If brute strength wouldn't work, he'd have to be faster. The creature was powerful, but its size made it slower to turn. If he could stay behind it, he might stand a chance. The beast charged again. Ethan ran sideways, the snow crunching beneath his boots. It turned sharply, but the movement was slower, giving him a brief opening. He drove his blade deep into the back of its leg. The creature roared in pain, its knee buckling slightly. It swung its massive head toward him, horns slicing the air. Ethan dove to the side. Rolling through the snow, blood stained the ground now, thick and dark against the white. The smell was sharp in the freezing air. The beast's breathing had grown heavier, steam pouring from its jaws. It stomped the ground, sending a wave of snow outward, forcing Ethan to shield his face. The silver-skinned woman watched silently, her expression unreadable. She did not move to help, did not give instruction. It was clear this was still part of the test. Ethan's chest ached with every breath, his vision blurred from exhaustion. But he pushed forward, refusing to fall. The creature came again, lowering its head to skewer him with its horns. Ethan waited until the last possible moment before stepping aside. As it passed, he drove his blade into its neck. The steel slid. Deep, hot blood sprang across his arm. The beast roared in fury, twisting violently. Throwing him off his feet, he hit the ground hard. The air knocked from his lungs. His fingers clenched the hilt of the blade, still buried in the creature's neck. With a final surge of strength, he yanked it free. The beast staggered, its red eyes flickering. Then it collapsed into the snow with a heavy crash, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Silence returned to the valley, broken only by the sound of Ethan's heavy breathing. The child stepped forward, their smile returning. They placed a small hand on his wrist. "You have bled enough for her to believe," they said quietly. Ethan looked past them to the silver-skinned woman. She was walking toward him now, slow and deliberate, her eyes locked on his. The storm began to rise again, and Ethan had the feeling this was still not the end. The smiles meaning the snow swirled again as the silver-skinned woman approached. Her steps were slow, deliberate, each one pressing softly into the fresh layer of white. Ethan stood there, his blade still in hand, his chest heaving, his body aching from the battles. The child remained beside him, small and calm, their tiny hands still resting lightly on his wrist. The beast's body lay behind them, steam rising from its wounds. the red of its blood staining the snow in jagged streaks. The woman stopped only a few steps away. Her glowing blue eyes studied him from head to toe, taking in the cuts, the blood. The way his shoulders sagged with exhaustion, her face was unreadable. Yet there was something in her gaze that had not been there before, a flicker of recognition. "You have fought," she said quietly, her voice smooth but carrying through. "The wind, you have bled." Ethan didn't answer at first. The storm's cold gnawed at his bones, his breath misting heavily. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. "I didn't fight for you." The child's head tilted slightly at his words, their smile softening. The woman's expression didn't change, though her eyes narrowed just a fraction. "You fought for the child," she said. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I fought because no one else would," he replied. For the first time, the corners of her mouth curved upward, just slightly. It was not the smile of a friend, nor of a victor. It was the smile of someone who had gotten the answer they wanted. The child stepped forward, releasing Ethan's wrist and walking toward the woman. Their small footprints pressed lightly into the snow. The woman knelt down, placing her hand on the child's shoulder, up close. Ethan could see faint markings along her skin, intricate silver lines that glowed faintly under the storm's light. They spoke to each other in a language he couldn't understand. The sound soft and flowing like water over stone when the woman stood again. She looked at him with a different kind of weight in her gaze. "You are one of us now," she said simply. Ethan frowned, not understanding. "I'm human," he said. The child turned back to him, their smile growing brighter. "Now you are more than that," they said, their voice carrying both innocence and something far older. Ethan's mind raced, the battles, the testing. The way she had watched without helping, it had all been for this moment. But he didn't know what being one of them meant. The wind rose again, whipping snow into their faces. The woman glanced over her shoulder toward the horizon, her expression darkening far in the distance. The ice cracked with a deep, echoing boom. The sound rolled through the valley, followed by a low rumble that made the ground shiver under Ethan's boots. The woman looked back at him. "This was not the true enemy," she said, her voice firm. Ethan's grip on his blade tightened. "Then what was the point of all this?" he asked. Her eyes glowed brighter. "To see if you would stand when the snow itself turns against you." The child returned to his side, looking up at him with that same smile. "You passed." They whispered. For some reason, those two words sent a shiver through him stronger than the cold wind. He didn't feel like a victor. He felt like someone who had just stepped into something far bigger than himself. The storm thickened again, cutting off the distant view. The woman stepped closer, close enough that he could see his reflection in her silver skin. Her hand touched his shoulder lightly, and in that touch was both weight and promise. "When the ice breaks, you will be called," she said. Ethan stared at her, trying to read her tone. Before he could speak, she turned away, walking back into the fog with the child at her side. He stood there, watching them fade into the storm. Until they were gone, the only sound was the wind and the faint settling of snow over the bodies of the fallen beasts. Ethan finally lowered his blade, his arm heavy. He didn't know if he had survived a trial or joined a war he couldn't see yet. The last image in his mind was the child's smile. It wasn't mockery, it wasn't relief. It was something deeper, the look of someone who had just found the peace they had been searching for, and somewhere in his gut, Ethan knew, whatever came next, that smile would follow him, even into the darkest storms.